The moment I walked across that stage, my entire family laughed behind my back, saying I'd never amount to anything, and that's when I decided to make them regret underestimating me forever. Before I get into what happened, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell because you won't want to miss how this story unfolds. Share it too because everyone loves seeing a true underdog rise to power. Right after my graduation, while everyone else was celebrating, I overheard my parents whispering about the estate my grandparents had left behind. They planned to manipulate every detail, cut me out completely, and claim the inheritance for themselves. The same people who hugged me on my graduation day and praised my achievements were secretly scheming to erase my place in the family legacy. My heart raced, but instead of panicking, I felt a surge of determination. They thought I was naive, too young, or powerless, but I had been preparing for this moment silently for years, for months. I had been quietly studying every legal document my grandparents ever left me, memorizing their investment plans, and understanding the loopholes that even my parents didn't notice. They had dismissed me, laughed at my questions, and treated me like I took up space. But while they were busy mocking me, I was building a plan step by step, quietly, without anyone realizing. Every smile they gave me, every condescending remark, every sarcastic laugh, they had unwittingly fueled my motivation. The next morning, while they were discussing their perfect plan over coffee, I signed the final trust documents that moved my grandparents' $1 million estate completely under my control. Every asset, every property, every investment was now untouchable. I did it quietly, without confrontation, because I knew the bigger victory would be watching them realize it later. The irony was almost intoxicating. The granddaughter they had ridiculed and ignored had outsmarted them all before they even knew the game had begun. Days passed, and I watched from the sidelines as they continued to scheme, completely unaware that the estate was no longer theirs to manipulate. My parents' faces, once filled with confidence and smugness, began to show subtle hints of frustration and confusion. They tried to charm, to negotiate, to manipulate me, not realizing that every move they made now strengthened my advantage. Each conversation was a reminder that the underdog they had dismissed had quietly become untouchable. Then came the first taste of public shock. At a family gathering, my cousin casually mentioned a new development regarding the estate. My parents froze mid-conversation, realizing too late that the naive granddaughter they had mocked now held all the cards. Their faces turned pale, whispers filled the room, and the smug superiority they had carried for years evaporated instantly. I didn't need to gloat, the truth alone was enough. The tables had turned completely. As I left that gathering, I couldn't help but smile. They had spent years thinking they controlled the family legacy, while I had been silently preparing to secure it in a way that made their scheming irrelevant. Every insult, every dismissive glance, every sarcastic comment had only sharpened my resolve. And this was just the beginning. The real shock, the public revelation, and the ultimate satisfaction were yet to come. The underdog had not only survived but had strategically outmaneuvered the very people who had thought she was powerless, and soon they would feel the full weight of their mistake. The days after graduation felt heavy, like every room in that house was hiding another secret. My parents suddenly became extra nice, asking strange questions, pretending to care about my plans, my future, my next step. I could hear the fake concern in their voices. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every compliment sounded forced. They were circling me, testing me, trying to see how much I knew. What they didn't understand was that the quiet girl they thought they could control had already moved 10 steps ahead. One evening at dinner, my father leaned back in his chair and laughed, saying, "You're lucky we're here to guide you. Magnolia, these things are too big for you." Everyone chuckled. The words stung, but I stayed calm. Inside, I felt something powerful settle in. They still believed I was small. They still believed I needed them. And that belief was about to destroy them. Behind the scenes, my phone never stopped buzzing. My letter confirmed that the trust was sealed tight. No loopholes, no shortcuts, no way in. Every property, every account, every future decision required my approval. While my parents were planning how to announce their control of the estate To extended family, I was reviewing reports, learning numbers, and preparing for the moment they would try to embarrass me publicly. I didn't rush, I waited. Timing was everything. The public moment came faster than I expected. My parents called a family meeting, inviting relatives, cousins, even close family friends. They framed it as a celebration dinner, but I could hear the real goal behind it. They wanted to show power. They wanted to make it clear who was in charge. They wanted to put me in my place in front of everyone. As I walked into the room, I felt eyes on me, whispers floating through the air, judgment thick and heavy. My mother stood up mid-dinner, smiling wide, and said, "Since Magnolia is still figuring out her life, we've decided to step in and manage the estate responsibly." Laughter followed. Some people nodded. Others looked at me with pity. My face burned, but I didn't interrupt. I let them talk. I let them dig deeper. Every word they spoke tightened the trap they didn't even know they were standing in. Then, my father added, louder this time, "It's better this way. Some people just aren't built to handle big responsibility." The room went quiet. That was the moment they expected me to break, to argue, to look weak. Instead, I slowly reached into my bag and placed a single folder on the table. No anger. No raised voice. Just calm. "I already handled it," I said softly. Confusion spread across the room. My parents froze. My mother's smile slipped. My father asked, "Handled what?" I looked around the table, meeting every pair of eyes. "The estate," I said. "It's in a trust. It has been for weeks." Silence hit hard. Forks stopped moving. Someone cleared their throat. My parents stared at the folder like it was a weapon. They flipped through the papers with shaking hands, their confidence draining with every page. The power shift was instant and undeniable. The same people who laughed minutes ago now couldn't even speak. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply stood up, thanked everyone for coming, and walked out. As the door closed behind me, I knew something had changed forever. They had tried to humiliate me publicly, and instead they had exposed themselves. But this wasn't the end, not even close. Because the moment they realized they'd lost control, they would try something desperate. And when they did, I would be ready. I didn't even make it to my car before my phone started buzzing. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that jumped from fake concern to panic in seconds. My mother wrote, "We need to talk." My father left a voicemail that sounded calm on the surface but cracked at the edges, like a man realizing the floor had disappeared under his feet. I didn't respond. Silence was the first consequence I gave them. And it worked better than any argument ever could. The next few days were chaos for them, not for me. Relatives called, pretending to check in, but their questions were sharp and curious. Everyone wanted to know how the quiet granddaughter had suddenly taken control of $1 million estate. Meanwhile, my parents started spreading a new story, saying I had been manipulated, that I didn't understand what I'd signed, that they were only trying to protect me. It was desperate, messy, and exactly what I expected. What they didn't realize was that every lie they told only pushed people closer to the truth. Behind closed doors, I stayed focused. I reviewed accounts, secured properties, and locked down access they once assumed was theirs. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they had tried to shrink for years. I wasn't doing this out of anger anymore. I was doing it out of clarity. The more control I took, the calmer I became. The underdog they mocked wasn't emotional or reckless. She was prepared. Then came the move they thought would break me. My parents filed a legal challenge, claiming I was pressured and unfit to manage the estate. They made sure everyone knew. It was meant to shame me, to drag my name through the family, to scare me into handing control back. Instead, it handed me the perfect stage. Because now it wasn't just a family fight, it was public. And public humiliation works both ways. At the first hearing, I walked in alone while they arrived together, confident, dressed for dominance. Whispers filled the room. People looked at me like I was about to be crushed. That's when my attorney laid everything out: timelines, emails, recordings, documents showing years of manipulation and planning. Proof that I had acted independently. Proof that they had been scheming long before graduation. Proof that the trust wasn't a reaction, it was a strategy. The judge didn't even need long. The challenge was dismissed, just like that. One sentence ended everything they thought they could control. My parents sat frozen, faces tight, while people around them slowly began to understand who the real problem had been all along. I didn't celebrate. I didn't react. I simply stood up and walked out again, stronger, calmer, and completely untouchable. But as I stepped into the sunlight, I knew the real ending hadn't arrived yet. Losing quietly wasn't something my parents were good at. They were already planning their next move. And this time, when they tried to strike back, they wouldn't just lose control of the estate, they would lose the image they had spent their entire lives protecting. A few weeks later, the final showdown came without warning. My parents invited the extended family over for what they called a celebration of the estate, thinking they could spin the narrative and make me look impulsive, immature, or ungrateful. I arrived calm-coast, carrying nothing but a quiet confidence they couldn't see coming. Their smug faces, their fake smiles, even the whispers, they were all bait, and I was ready to flip the entire table. As dinner progressed, my mother began speaking, trying to lecture everyone about responsibility, about how I had been tricked into signing documents, about how they had my best interests at heart. The room nodded politely, some cousins looking at me with subtle pity. I stayed silent, letting her words hang like smoke in the air. Then I set a single envelope on the center of the table. Just one. All eyes turned to me. This, I said softly, is the final proof. Everything is in my control, exactly as it was intended. The estate, the assets, the decisions, everything runs through the trust. And it was done legally, transparently, and with my grandparents' guidance long before anyone tried to manipulate it. I watched as their smiles froze. My father's jaw dropped. My mother's hands shook. Emma, my cousin, whispered, "She did all this herself?" Their shock was priceless. Every comment they had ever made, every sneer, every condescending laugh, now felt meaningless. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The documents, the proof, the timing, it all spoke louder than any argument ever could. I survived your schemes, thrived while you plotted, and secured what's mine with patience and precision, I continued. And now it's over. The estate isn't about control anymore. It's about fairness, and the fairness was already set in motion. My parents were speechless. The extended family whispered among themselves, realizing the quiet granddaughter they had underestimated was the one holding all the power. There was no comeback, no rebuttal, no last-minute twist for them. Their plan had completely collapsed, and the victory was mine, clean and undeniable. I stood, smiled faintly, and walked out of that house one last time. Behind me, the family who had tried to manipulate, belittle, and erase me sat stunned, powerless, and finally humbled. The underdog had not only survived, she had conquered completely, and the lesson was clear. Underestimate me at your own peril. This was the end of their story with me. The trust was sealed, the victory undeniable, and the emotional satisfaction complete. Magnolia had outsmarted, outlasted, and outshone them all.